Hello and welcome to another video from Flash Jazz Cat. In this video we're going to have a look at this beautiful Atari 1200 XL, which was sent in for a number of upgrades, and I think it's turned out really nicely. So this is another one of those retrospectives where I've already done all the hard work and I'm just going to give you a guided tour of what's actually inside the machine. So if that's of interest to you, you're in for a treat. But before we do that, let's have a word from this video's sponsor. And the sponsor for this video is, of course, PCBWay. PCBWay have been experts in the field of printed circuit board prototyping and manufacture for 9 years now, and they offer a fantastic range of services including CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication and injection moulding. They have a fantastic front end on the website where you can put in all the parameters of your project and get an instant quote. So if you're in need of a printed circuit board, why not pop down to PCBWay today and take advantage of the special offer by using the link in the description under the video. Okay, so this is a very nicely preserved Atari 1200 XL that was sent in. I think it's been bought. Well, I don't know. It looks like, at first glance, it looked like it was new old stock because it's so clean and it's got no discoloration on the case whatsoever. But when I had a close look here, there's some sort of, I don't know if it's almost sort of scuff marks on the keycaps here. It's not anything, it doesn't detract from the look of the thing, but it just looks like there's some evidence of some cleaning work here. I don't know. There's a couple of little scuffs on the trim there. Other than that, it's just absolutely perfect. There's no scratches on the perspex or anything like that. It's just absolutely spot on. So generally, and inside as well, of course, it looked pretty much untouched. I think the delay line chip looked like it had been replaced, but that might have been done in the factory during quality control. I don't know. But generally speaking, this is one of the best looking examples of a 1200 XL I've seen. Now, I haven't had too many of these through my hands recently. I've got some of my own, which I've just had a look in the cupboard there because this one's so nice. It's rejuvenated interest a little bit in the 1200 XL. I've tended to favour the 600 XL for a long time, partly because of the lack of desk space here, because since we're going to move house, hopefully I'll have more space. I'll certainly have a much bigger work desk at the new place, so I may rethink the situation. But when I had a look in the cupboard anyway, most of mine have gone kind of yellow. As we speak, I've got the retro bright process going on in the kitchen. But anyway, this one didn't need any of that. So I'll open the lid up anyway and show you what I've actually done to it. So if we take the lid off and have a look at the motherboard, if you're a seasoned Atari 8-bitter, you might actually recognise a lot of this stuff. What we've got in here is we have Ultimate U1MB right in the middle there. We've got Sophia 2. Now, where the owner managed to get a Sophia 2 from, I just do not know. But he got one anyway, and that's been installed. Of course, that gives you DVI video output. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Sophia board, that plugs into the GTIA socket here. It's had a new precision socket put in, and that takes the video signal from the emulated GTIA chip and sends it out the back as DVI. It also supports analog 15 kHz RGB, VGA, and I think component video. So it's very versatile, but obviously the digital signal's on a certain number of these pins over here, and the rest are for the analog signal, which isn't used here. I don't know offhand if it puts the VGA signal out on the analog pins on the DVI connector. I can't remember that offhand. Now, the Ultimate U1MB, if you're somehow not familiar with that, that gives you 1MB RAM upgrade. It replaces all the ROMs on the machine, gives you multiple operating system slots, a built-in parallel bus interface. ROM, now that's very important with the 1200 XL, of course, because we don't have a parallel bus interface on this machine. The whole back end of the computer is taken up with this enormous heatsink for the rectifier, because of course this machine's powered by 9V AC power supply, and that's rectified to 5V DC and 12V DC over here. That all gets pretty warm, so it needs a big heatsink. Now, before you install the Ultimate U1MB, I've got another video on this, so if you want to find out how to install Ultimate U1MB in a a 1200 XL, go away and watch that one. I'll link it in the description. But you first need to do what we call a single OS chip modification on here, because by default the 1200 XL has two 24-pin OS ROMs, an upper ROM and a lower ROM, and we need to change that so that it's basically compatible with an 800 XL, 600 XL, etc. So we do that first. That involves taking an extra address line from the CPU, removing a jumper, realigning some jumpers here, usually replacing the two 24-pin sockets down here with 28-pin sockets, although one of them is unused. But in the original modification you can put a basic ROM and an OS ROM on the board. Bob Woolley designed that modification. You'll know him as Bob 1200 XL, and he obviously envisaged that you were just going to modify the machine so that it was functionally similar to the 800 XL. I say similar, not identical of course, because we still don't have the external select signal or the parallel bus on the back, although you can add an EXT cell signal to the board, which you need to do if, for example, you put VBXE in the machine. But anyway, I'm getting off the topic there. So we first mod the board so that it's functionally similar to an 800 XL, and at that point we can go ahead and install Ultimate 1MB pretty much as we normally would. All the little pick-off points for the 4 signals for Ultimate 1MB are all around the MMU and that kind of area, so it's quite neat. Of course, I've routed all the cables nicely. This seems to be pretty much the shortest distance I can go from A to B there. And we've got the DVI connector at the back for the Sophia. Now the other mod that we've got here, the other device, is the Spectre board. Now the Spectre board replaces the CD4050, which is the chip that the GTIA video signals are routed through when they are on their way to the monitor jack and to the modulator, which has been removed here. So the Spectre, much like the UAV, although the two devices have got nothing to do with one another, they do the same job. And this uses a more modern video circuit to take those signals straight from the GTIA and send them to the legacy monitor jack, whereas I've disengaged that jack from the legacy circuit and patched these signals into it. And the S-Video and the composite are much better than anything you would get, even with the ClearPic mod. And the ClearPic mod on the 1200 XL, which I'll also link to, it's quite labour intensive. There's a lot of components need to be removed and replaced. The results are really good. Bob 1200 XL again, having designed that one, Bob Woolley. But this is better, and it's much quicker to install one of these than it is to make, fairly dramatic modifications to the video circuit. So that's what I opted to do. I recommended to the owner that he get a Spectre board. So I'll pop the board out of the case anyway, and you can have a closer look at the work that's been done. So the other thing you've probably noticed here is we've got this jack here. Now this is a 3.5mm standard headphone jack. Now there's a hole on the back of the heatsink here that it's just there out of the factory, and this was an ideal spot to put this little headphone jack. And the reason I need to have this is because, of course, the DVI connector there's no digital audio source on the board. There would be if there was a Pokémax in here, but we haven't quite got to the point where we're linking the two up such that we can get audio through DVI or HDMI for that matter. So when you're using this DVI video output, you've really got no audio source. You could make a special cable to pick the audio off the legacy video jack if you wanted to, I suppose. But what most people want, and this was true in this case, is a little headphone jack, because many televisions that accept a DVI video source, they kind of expect the audio source to be on a 3.5mm audio jack there. So that's what we've done. So I've fitted this little jack directly to the heatsink. It was quite fiddly. I've used a bit of solder on the inside to just wedge it. It's got a little blob of solder there just to keep the retaining nut secure. So that's pretty solid. Of course, we've got the mono audio is routed to both channels there, so that's the audio jack, and you'll see how that looks when I put the case back on. Now the Sophia video jack, because the RF modulator on the 1200 XL, it just has to be different, and it had the hole at the back of the case for the little RF connector. It's a lot higher than it is on the other models of Atari. So that's why this has to be mounted quite a bit higher, because obviously I wanted to reuse the hole that was originally in the case and widen it out, of course, into a rectangle. So that dictates that this connector has to be a bit on the high side. So what I've done, because the RF modulator on the 1200XL has totally different attachment points to any of the other machines in the range, and that's not really catered for by the Sophia daughter board. I just drilled a couple of new holes here and here and here and here to match the pre-supplied vias in the daughter board. So that enabled me to mount the thing very securely on these standoffs here, and it's absolutely rock solid. That's not going anywhere. It's attached with a total of 6 pins. So of course on the bottom of the board there, that's where the holes are, and I've just smeared that with solder because I had to mount the thing so high up that the pins just reached the board and they just went through the holes. The one at the back, there's no copper on the bottom of the board at that particular point, but there is on the top, so I was able to stick the iron in there, and that is soldered nice and solidly to the ground plane on the motherboard. That's the extra address line that I spoke of before. These wires here, a couple of patch wires actually, because I kind of misjudged where to put the Ultimate 1MB. I should have nudged it along a little bit further that way, so when I drilled the hole I went straight through some traces, but that's no problem. It was a couple of SIO lines, so I've just patched them with a little bit of magnet wire there, and it all looks very well, and it has turned out very nicely, because that is the perfect position. The reason I can't actually go much further this way, which would have avoided those traces anyway, is because we've got this connector here for the Sophia, and that is right, the cable is right up against the post, the standoff on the left hand side, belonging to the Ultimate 1MB. So there you go. So you have to make a couple of little compromises, but I don't think it's detracted from the aesthetic appeal of the finished product there anyway. So quite a lot of work was done. Now, in addition to this, as is always the case with 1200XL keyboards, and this keyboard is absolutely beautiful. The lettering on the keys is brilliantly sort of off-white, like the ice cream white of the rest of the case. It's gorgeous. But as is always the case, and I've got a video on this as well, which I'll link to below, the point on the PCB of the keyboard where the Mylar contacts connect to the copper contacts, or the gold-plated rather, contacts on the PCB, is always subject to corroded adhesive for some reason that I don't know why. They put this adhesive pad to attach the Mylar, that vital contact point, and it always dries out and it actually lifts the pads away from the PCB. It does the exact opposite of what it should be doing, so that needs to be removed. So the whole Mylar has to be carefully removed from the PCB. As I say, it's all in the other video, and once you've got the Mylar off, you can clean away that nasty adhesive. Sometimes you have to do some repair on the carbon pads of the Mylar itself. In this case, it was one of those where there was no damage whatsoever to the carbon pads, which is good. So it was not quite as difficult, but it's still a fiddly, time-consuming job, just because you don't want to tear all the silicon on the Mylar. But I'm well practiced at it now, and I can always do it. I've never ever had a 1200XL through here, and I've had a couple of dozen at this point, and never ever have I not been able to salvage the Mylar. I know there is a aftermarket replacement available, but I've never ever needed it. One machine was actually sent with the new Mylar, which is fair enough. I've fitted it for the customer, but I've never had one that I couldn't save. I understand you do occasionally somehow get them where they've been actually damaged, possibly by a prior repair attempt, and the thing just can't be salvaged. But in generally speaking, you can always save the Mylar, or you can always rather fix that inherent fault that afflicts all 1200XL keyboards. Even if they've just been sitting in a warehouse for 40 years, the keyboard will eventually have problems. And in this case, several keys didn't work, the customer said. So I just automatically did the fix, and with the fix done, everything works. Alright, so we've got the case back on the machine now, and there's a close-up of the serial number for all you serial number aficionados. No worries. And there's another close-up of the top of the machine, just so you can see what excellent condition it's in. So here's the new holes in the back of the case that I talked about before. So this is at the same height as the old RF modulator hole that of course has been vacated since we took that out. I've just left the channel switch there, it's not doing any harm, it's not doing anything now. And of course there we've got our headphone jack securely fastened to the heatsink. So there you go, so that's the back of the machine, and I think it looks extremely nice. It's a sympathetic modification, and I think the owner's going to be very pleased with that. And there's a closer look at the back, just so you can see the connectors in detail, and I think it looks pretty nice. Right, so there's our legacy video output. That's the Spartados X ROM that's just booted up there. I think what we're going to have to do here is upgrade the firmware. Yes, we are. So there's the original Ultimate 1MB firmware menu, but there's another problem that you sometimes get on these 1200 XLs. There's a bit of noise on the reset line, sort of a residual echo which can confuse the Ultimate 1MB, and you'll know you've got that problem if you see a lot of random looking inverse video characters, just undriven bus data in the menu instead of what's supposed to be there. That's fixed with a little capacitor between reset and ground, but that hasn't been necessary on this machine.
Nah, it'll be fine.
So that's the very nice Spectre video. So I'll plug in the DVI connector on the back here, and we will switch sources over to DVI. Hopefully it can handle the signal, and it can. So that's the DVI signal, and of course it's just unimaginably sharp, absolutely perfect. So that's working as well. Very occasionally you'll need to change the DVI resolution for the TV to handle it, but certainly not in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in SIO to PC, and let's update the firmware. So we've got an absolutely crystal clear display here. I'm going to press reset just so that the high speed, I think it's 3 times SIO, works. We're not going to go for Divisor 0 yet because there's nothing here that can actually handle it. So anyway, let's run UFlash, get this firmware updated. Now we're going to want the SIDE3 and the Sophia plugins, but in the first instance we'll go for the Ultimate 1MB SIDE3 ROM, update the whole thing, and you will rejoin when that's been done. Right, happy days, that completed successfully. So now what we're going to do is I'll do a quick reboot. So we've come into the new firmware menu with a blank profile. I will put Altera Basic on. It's head and shoulders better than stock Atari Basic. Although I would love it if Avery could just find the space to make Altera Basic recognise lowercase stuff. It rejects lowercase commands out of hand at the moment, which is just a little bit frustrating. I think Turbo Basic XL allows you to type in lowercase. I found that when I was messing around with FujiNet the other week, because all the URLs are case sensitive, so you find yourself typing in lowercase quite a lot, but never mind. There probably just isn't room. I mean, I'd love to see a clear screen command as well, CLS, but I know Avery's up against the wall there, but that's off topic anyway. So we'll set the clock. Of course it's 2023, 13:23. Now I notice this isn't ticking ahead. That's interesting. I think we might have an RTC problem here. So we've got a non-running clock on the Ultimate 1MB. Isn't that marvellous? Right, so we've got full Divisor 0 support now, so I'm going to run UFlash from drive 2, and I've just compiled a plugin for Sophia 2 and SIDE3, so we will just want the plugin. We've already got the SIDE3 PBI BIOS on there, so we'll just flash that plugin. Missed it. There we go. Right, so now if we go into the menu, we should see that we have, there we go, so we've got Sophia SIDE3 plugin version. It's correctly identified the video, NTSC 60, and we've picked up the Sophia, and now on the plugin menu we should have, there we go, we've got full control over the Sophia resolution and all those other settings. That's brilliant. And the clock started to run as well. Isn't that marvellous? The clock's just spontaneously started to run. It must have been in a completely uninitialized state. What I think we should definitely do now, it's a due process really to check if side 3 is going to work in the machine.
You serious?
Because I think the owner's got one. So I'm going to have to take the shell off the side 3.2, the pre-release side 3.2 that I was sent, to plug it into the machine. You can get the side 3 case to fit in a 1200 XL. You just need to plane off about, well, what's it, 1/4 millimeter off either side of the shell. It's just to get the thing so that it's at the same level as this little narrower lip at the front, which has already been milled down. They're still not milling it down all the way along, I don't know why, but in any case that's all you need to do to get it to fit. But I'm going to turn it off anyway. I'm going to plug the thing in without the shell on it and see if the thing even starts up. I'll see if we can get it at the loader. Right, okay, no media. Well, there is a card. Yeah, it's not God Christ. Yeah, it's not recognising the side 3 cartridge at all.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Right, I've just took the 74 LS08 chip out of the 1200 XL and replaced it with a 74 F08 chip. So let's see if that's made any difference. Alright, so we have side 3 working properly now. What I've done, well, I'll show you what I've done. I'll turn this off. I've just tested all 3 generations of side 3 here since I've done this little mod. Now what I've done here is the usual 1200 XL noisy reset line fix, which is just a capacitor. I think it's a 100 picofarad capacitor between reset on the CPU and ground. You can fit this to the ultimate 1 megabyte. I mean, it doesn't make any difference at all. It's all going to have exactly the same effect, and it's not going to harm the computer. It's not going to upset its behavior without ultimate 1 megabyte either. But that just irons out those echoey little reset pulses. Now, the reason that I didn't think this machine even needed this fix is because until I plugged the side 3 cartridge in, it was working fine. Normally, when this fix is required for ultimate 1 megabyte, you'll see the problem straight away, and the problem is usually a lot of inverse tab characters in the setup menu where you would normally expect to see all the options. And I did eventually get that problem when I had the side 3 cartridges, all 3 of them, one at a time, plugged into the machine. So that immediately triggered my memory, and I did this fix. Now I can actually get the side 3 cartridges to work, but of course I'm still going to have to test them because I'm a bit spooked now, this late in the game, that we did have a problem. But anyway, so that's the fix I've done, and it does now appear to work. So now I should be able to boot into the setup menu. It takes a little time for this TV to sync to the DVI input. There we go. So we've gone straight into the loader. That's expected. So now we're no longer getting that crap on the screen, and I'm going to have to reset the clock again because it was such a catastrophic mess without that little capacitor that it actually lost the time and reset the clock. So it's the 24th and it is 14:27. There we go. FujiNet owners, by the way, if you want to have high-speed acceleration, SIO acceleration on your FujiNet, set that to all. I might, in the next firmware update, explicitly include FujiNet in the selection, but anyway, that's what you need to do. Disks and PC Link won't cut it because that PC Link's a different device ID, so you want to select all, and that will accelerate your FujiNet. So right, so everything else looks reasonably in order. Let's put Altera Basic back in there because I like it. Right, and turn that on, save that to the profile. Now when we run the loader, we should get the loader, and we seem to. I've checked with the owner, he's got the early revision side 3 cartridge. So that's what I'm going to focus on testing on here. He's got a couple of them, I think. I asked him what colour the PCB was and he said it was blue. So we're going to test the original blue PCB side 3 here. And I'll run a lot of tests on it. I mean, the loader isn't blowing up straight away, so that's a good sign. Of course, I'll run the usual stability tests on this machine. We'll test some cartridges. So for example, we have Ace of Aces. And there we go, there's Ace of Aces. And we can run the RW test program. That's better. And we'll run RWCRC. This takes quite a long time to run. But yeah, anyway, so hopefully this machine is now working with the peripherals that the owner wants to use it with. Probably be a few more hours of testing to make sure. So even when owners, as they generally are very understanding that these things are not necessarily completely determinate and there's all sorts of little dependencies and snags that can crop up, really it's down to me to make sure that the thing's usable. And that is why, although I think my prices are extremely reasonable, but part of the cost of the work is ensuring the things work. So even when you've turned off the soldering iron, that's not the end of the job. You've got to test everything with everything else to make sure it works in a predictable fashion. And I've had some oversights in the past, and it's not fun when a machine has to come back because something unexpected happens. So I have to spend longer testing things, stability testing things, and of course that's my time and it has to be paid for. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I want to thank again, as usual, the patrons. Of course, patrons do get early access to these videos, and of course they get their name on the screen, as you can see round about now in the video. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. It's a beautiful machine. My interest in the 1200 XL has been kind of rejuvenated by this one, because I haven't had one in for a long time. And I think it looks nice and it works. Eventually, it worked well. And the Ultimate 1MB and the SIDE3 combo are particularly useful with the 1200 XL for the aforementioned reason that it doesn't have the parallel bus. Of course, we've seen a couple of 1200 XLs that do have a parallel bus retrofitted. Mine was among them. I did that years ago, but it's not very nice inside to look at. And I think since we've got the essentially a parallel hard disk solution here provided by Ultimate and the SIDE3 cartridge, it's not really a major drawback not to have the parallel bus on this machine. Anyway, I'm gonna finish testing this computer this afternoon, pack it up and send it back to the owner, and I'm sure he'll get years of pleasure from it. I hope he does, because it's really turned out very well. I have done some of these ones before with DVI connectors on the back, but I think practice makes perfect, and I think it looks very nice. So that's all for this video. Thank you again for watching. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next video. So bye bye for now.